Hello and welcome. I'm Vicki Hodges, your Fully Told podcast host. This podcast brings together lived experience and expert insight to create open and honest conversations around endometriosis and infertility. Every story shared is to help others feel seen, challenge stigma, build empathy, and support advocacy. So whether you're listening for yourself or someone else, thank you for being here and welcome to Fully Told. Hey, welcome to another episode of Fully Told. I'm Vicki Hodges, your podcast host today, and I'm really excited to have as my guest Fiona. She has been wanting to share her story for a while, so I'm so glad I was able to give you the platform to do it. I'm going to hand over to you and do a little introduction to yourself, please.
Yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Fiona. I work in internal communications. I had endometriosis, I assume, really, for most of my adult life until the condition got so bad that I had to have a medical hysterectomy about 6 years ago. And I just had such a difficult time being taken seriously and getting to a point where it was possible to get any kind of diagnosis and any kind of treatment that I always have wanted to kind of share my story so that others can hopefully learn how to advocate for themselves a little bit in a way that maybe I wasn't able to. So that's really kind of my focus, wanting to share my story a bit.
Yeah, and there's no hopefully about it. Every single person that shares anything that is it's definitely gonna help, because just one person sharing may make another person brave enough to share. Whatever it may be, just you being here sharing your story is gonna help not just one person, but so many people. So thank you.
No, I hope so. You're welcome.
Yeah. So when you first saw that I was doing this podcast, what is the main thing? What is it you wanted to get across?
I think really I just wanted to encourage people who are perhaps feeling like they're hitting brick walls when trying to engage with the medical institutions that we kind of rely on to help us. That there are ways to get the help that you need. I think having had to wait for such a long time to be taken seriously, it's just so important to get some idea of what it needs to look like almost to get the help that you need. And I think really just to reassure people that what you're experiencing or what you're feeling isn't mad. It's not you being weak. It's you having a very particular experience. And I certainly know that from my experience, I needed to be told that by an external person. I was speaking to a colleague, I was having a flare up at work and I was grey and ashen and clammy and trying to kind of work through a flare up. And a colleague said, "Oh, are you okay?" This was post diagnosis. And she was an ex nurse. And I said, "Oh, yeah, I have endometriosis and I'm just kind of working through a flare up." And she said, "It's so interesting because, a lot of the talk around endometriosis now, the pain is like having a heart attack." But she said, actually, people are saying it's like being in active labor. And so it was
Mm,
such a light bulb moment for me because I thought about all the things that a person with endometriosis is expected to just continue doing, to work, to cook, to clean, to care for children, to care for elderly parents, to do the big shop, to, change the duvet covers, all of whatever it is, all of the things that we're just expected to do. Would we ask that of somebody in active labour? Arguably
mm,
not. And so it was such a light bulb moment for me. And that almost gave me permission to start saying, actually, I can't socialise tonight. I'm in pain. I'm exhausted. I have this condition. And to be really upfront and open about it and say, I have this condition and it affects me in these ways. And that was really, really important. That was a really, really important part of me being able to look after myself. And I think if that story on its own even helps somebody to think, actually, I can just say no to something now, because if I was in active labour, I'd be saying no to it, then it's time well spent.
So I'm so glad that that person was there and able to give you that advice, because obviously it's been life changing for you to be able to handle your endometriosis in a much more positive way. But when I was listening to you then, you were saying, we're expected to carry on our day looking after them and this and that. And then I was thinking, is she going to mention about looking after ourselves? And it's true, we always forget to look after ourselves. And it's like
Yeah.
having permission of somebody else to look after ourselves. It shouldn't have to be that way, should it? But for so many people, regardless of, a menstrual health condition, it's like we quite often put ours last. And then you've got, on top of life stresses, you've got a chronic menstrual health condition. We're just expected to put a brave face on and continue our daily activities. Um, You did say when you began about hitting a brick wall with medical professionals. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about your experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to feel like I'm beating up on them because, when it comes to a GP, I know you have 5-minute appointments, you need to get people in and out, and you're expected to be an expert on a broad range of topics. So I do understand all of that. But I saw so many GPs during my time prior to diagnosis. And just I think it was just a level of interest almost was so low, and it felt very much. I mean, it felt very much that we were into much more of a symptom control situation than we were interested in looking at any causes. So when it comes to symptom control, it felt that they very much had one answer, and that answer was contraception, and that answer was the pill. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so for me, a number of GPs said this to me, and every time they said it, I had to say, I know, but my mum had a stroke, my mum had breast cancer. That's not something. My dad had high blood pressure, but something I'm able to do. And I kept having to have this same conversation over and over and over again, to the point where one GP had the conversation with him, and his parting shot to me was just, well, if you're not prepared to help yourself, I don't know what you want from me. And at the time, I was so shocked. And I wish I'd had the forethought, or I wish I'd had the ability to think quickly enough to say, well, what I'd like is to find out
Mm.
why I can't have periods like all my friends have them. They pop in a Tampax and get on with their lives. I'd love to know why my experience isn't like that. And I think people always say, you know your own body, don't you? You know when there's something that isn't quite right. And I knew there was something that wasn't right. And
Yeah.
just trying to get that taken seriously to a point where we could find out what it was rather than just treat the symptoms was so incredibly difficult. I was only thinking about this actually a day or two ago. I was given these enormous, I just call them horse pills, these huge pills that were
Yeah.
kind of slow release painkillers. So again, just symptom
Yeah.
control. And these huge painkillers that would slow release over a 24-hour period. But I wasn't told I could only take only take two every period or whatever. So I would take one every day, 6,
Mhm.
7, 8 days.
Yeah.
But it only occurred to me the day when I was thinking about it. I thought, I wonder if that's done me any harm in like my liver or
Oh,
my
wow.
stomach lining, or because there wasn't also and here's the thing to protect your stomach lining while you're taking these gigantic horse pills. So it's the knock-on effects of this kind of symptom control focus that I think I'm now slightly more
Yeah.
concerned about, but also about the kind of how we how we break open that access. So when we spoke previously, I explained to you that the only time I was able to break into any kind of gynecological contact, really, with any kind of consultant contact, was when the nurse was physically unable to do a smear test for me. And I was lying on the table and I had tears. I remember so clearly the tears were falling into my hair, making my hair all wet and matted, clinging onto the wall because it was so incredibly painful. And she was baffled and she said, do you have children? And I just cried because what we wanted more than anything else was children and we just weren't able to. And then she said, well, this isn't right, so we need to refer you. And it was so interesting to me that it was only when it became a fertility issue that
Bummer.
the doors opened. The
Yeah.
blackout pain, the number of times you end up throwing
Be
your trousers in
forgotten.
the time and going and buying a new outfit, and going out at lunchtime with one outfit, coming back in another one, having tossed some in a skip on the way back. None of that stuff
Yeah.
was worthy of further investigation. But you're struggling to have children. All right, let's have a
No,
conversation
we'll
about
look
that.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was so disappointing because it had been years. It had been 17, 18 years I'd been living like that before it became, "Oh, is it fertility? Well, hang on, there might be a funding pot for that." And it's just funding pots, I guess, isn't it? We don't have lots of funding pots for menstrual health, but we do have lots of funding pots or not lots, but we have more funding pots for fertility challenges. And I found that really frustrating and I found that really sad.
Right.
But at least it did open the door and I've ripped their arm off for it, obviously.
Yeah.
I was started to get some really excellent treatment after that.
So sorry that you've had to deal with all that. But again, it's like these people are coming into your lives. Like the person at work, there was an ex-nurse saying, you can start looking after yourself, have permission. And that nurse, seeing you trying to hold it together through the pain and the smear, going, yeah, we'll look into this for you. Where everybody else seems to have let you down. And it's so sad that it's putting a plaster over it's not seeing a person as a whole, it's not joining the dots, it's not saying, "Okay, they're coming in with lots of different symptoms, maybe not all at the same time, but if I look back at the notes," which I don't think many people do, look back at the notes and go, "Actually, they're coming in with this, and this, and this." I'm gonna ask the question
Yeah.
to them rather than you having to constantly go to a doctor and ask for help. It's, you know, those two people have suggested to you and offered that help to you. And I think we can get so fatigued by constantly needing to battle to just have the simple thing. Yes, it's okay to be put on contraception if that's what you want, but you explain to them that doesn't suit me. It's not in my family history that's advisable to have that. And yet, the comeback to that was a blame response. Well, if
Oh,
you're not going to take my advice, you know, and then that weighs heavy on us as well. Of like, well, actually, maybe I'm not doing what I should be doing to take care of myself. But yeah, it's so sad that it usually is top level kind of go on the pill or cope with it a little bit longer or, okay, add this pain relief to it.
and
But then,
also it's just quite often times it's just periods are painful.
yeah, periods are painful. That's normal. Yeah. Go
It's
home, stop
painful and
moaning.
there's
Yeah.
whatever the hell this is. And I think I found that really hard because you compare I don't know whether you found this, but you compare yourself to everyone else in your life, don't you? And, you know, as I said earlier, like my friends are just popping in a tampon and getting on with their day and I'm staring at them going, "How are you doing that? That looks amazing. How are you doing that?" And you know, I remember I was working through another flare up in a different organization and I'd gone out at lunchtime to buy a TENS machine so I could
Mm,
get through the day. Can you imagine? So that was my first cue. This was before I'd worked with the other lady who said it was tantamount to active labour. I bought this TENS machine and I came back and I was working through, and I must have been huffing and puffing. I must have been doing something. I was probably doing Lamar's breathing or something, but I was obviously huffing and puffing. And my manager, female manager, disappointingly, just turned around to me and said, "For goodness sake, Fiona, we all have periods." You know, and I finessed that language significantly. And so I was like, "Well, yeah, we do, but I don't think we're all having them in the same way, are we? We're not having the same periods, clearly." And, you know, after I was recovering from one of my surgeries, well, actually the surgery where it became clear that it had grown to such an extent that a number of very complicated organs had become fused together and that the only realistic treatment for that was going to be a hysterectomy. And someone I was very close to came around to visit me, and I hadn't told anyone yet about the
yeah.
hysterectomy. And they said, "Oh, I'm having hysterectomy. It turns out I'm riddled with endometriosis." And I said, "Oh gosh, that's awful. You must have been in such terrible, terrible pain." And they literally looked me in the eye in my own house while I lay recovering from surgery. And they went, "Well, I'm not one to make a fuss about my periods. I just get on with it." You know, it's just like, because endometriosis, as you know, is one of those weird things where the amount that you have doesn't really have any bearing
No,
on its
no.
impact. You could be
Yeah,
riddled with it and not know it. You
yeah.
could have a very small amount of it and be in agony. And that was such a blow when that person said that to me. I just thought, I cannot believe that you've just said that because that's so unfair. And she'd known me all those years. She wasn't a new friend. She was like, "Oh, this seems odd. This is a new thing." And she'd known me all those years. And it was just so disappointing. But we compare ourselves to those people.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, yeah, she does just get on with it. Why am I not just getting on with it? And the impact of that mentally that has on us
Mm,
as we're trying to figure stuff out and we're trying to just get the help that we need to try and be normally functional is immense. And it's so difficult. So yeah, another, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you about it was just, you know, if other people are hearing these sorts of messages, you
mm,
know that they're not true. Just know that it's not true that,
yeah.
you know, other people just get on with it and that therefore the inference being that you should be doing the same thing. We're not all having the same period.
No.
We're just not.
And like you've mentioned, even those in the endo community is really strong and supportive. But there are people that unfortunately have adopted the belief of the gaslighting that they've been fed for years. I would just get on with it, you know, and then they pass it on to another fellow endo warrior. And that can even have that stronger impact. Well, if somebody with endo is even saying that to me and they understand this, yeah.
And also, I think there's something, I was thinking about resilience as well in the last couple of days. I was thinking about it and just thinking, well, actually, because I'd always thought I'm just not very resilient. I'm just not resilient enough. I thought, well, actually, there's far more resilience in keeping going when you're struggling so much than there is in not having to struggle. The last few days, I was thinking about resilience. And I think one of the things I used to beat myself up about was I used to kind of say, well, you're just not resilient enough.
Mm,
You know, you should just be able to get on with it. You know, as we say, you're just not showing enough resilience. You need to work on your resilience and become more resilient. And this R word just like goes round and round and round in your head. And it was only when I was sat down to really think about it the other day about something else. And I just thought, actually, it's far more resilient to be fighting to get recognized, to fight to get your condition diagnosed, to fight to get the treatment that you need, than it is to never have to need it. It's so much more resilient, to have to do all of that than, if you don't have endo or you don't have whatever the condition is, you don't have to fight for those things because you're just living and that's lovely. And congratulations, I'm delighted for you. But actually, that doesn't make you more resilient. If anything, it makes you less resilient because you had nothing to be resilient about.
Yes.
And I think, again, it's the stories we tell.
Mm.
I'm just not resilient enough. I should be more resilient. And it just isn't true. And it's so damaging.
Yeah. It's so, so damaging. I have strong opinions on the word resilient. I hate it. I think
Good
for
for you.
me, it's because I know, like you said, how much I've battled for a lot of things with my health. And that word resilient kept coming up, like you said. I have to be resilient. I am resilient, like have resilience. And it's no, why should we? Like, why should we say strong so long continuously? Because that can do so much damage. Like, it's okay to go, this is shit. This is like,
Yeah.
I can't cope with this. It's okay to say, I can't do this. But I think the story is that we just have to put that brave face and soldier on and just get on with it and put up with they're just normal periods. It's okay to have a bit of pain. But yeah, I don't think we should be encouraging resilient. That's my view. I don't think we should be encouraging being resilient. No, it's okay to try and fight for your rights and advocate, but it's also okay to just go, I need support, I need help, I can't do this all along. Uh, yeah, it
And
wo
even just to crash.
yeah,
We could be resiliently carrying on, but
yeah,
what about the importance of just having a crash? Just going, "Do you know what? I just need to be on the sofa with a hot drink and 100 Christmas movies and call it a job done." There's value in that.
yeah,
There's real value in that.
yeah,
And I feel sometimes in some places, not everywhere, but in some places, in some circumstances, that resilience word is weaponized a little bit as well, and it's kind of used as a stick to beat us with. I think we saw a bit of that in COVID, perhaps, that,
mm,
there was a lot of we need to be more resilient. And
yeah,
it's like, well, sometimes things are just too hard and that's okay as well. So yeah, I think I caution non-resiliency as well, if I'm honest.
but yeah, I agree. Yeah. So you mentioned about having a supportive boss, but also a not supportive boss. Um, like, what have been your experiences in the workplace? What have been some of the worst, I guess, case scenarios that you've not had support?
Yeah, I think probably that was the worst case scenario when I was working. I think it was just so much more disappointing because it was a woman.
Mm,
And I, rightly or wrongly, perhaps expected better, if you like. I expected more empathy. I expected them to kind of go, oh, God, that must be hard. But actually, I found that perhaps male bosses, because they have no frame of reference, are actually more empathic because they're like, I have no idea how bad this must feel, but it's clearly bad. And because they don't have a frame of reference for it,
yeah.
they almost trust your, I don't want to say your story or your version of events, but they trust what you're telling them about it because they have nothing to compare it to. So they can't say, what are you talking about? Oh, my periods have always been fine. So they don't have that. So they do. I almost feel like there's a greater trust bond with a male manager. I had a male manager in one of my companies. It was post-diagnosis. It was that period when I was receiving treatment, having these regular, every 18 months, I'd have these excision surgeries that would involve a 2-week recovery. And then I'd go back and I'd be okay again for another 12 months and go back into the system and have it again.
Wow.
And it was during that period, it was that period where I also found out I would need a hysterectomy. Again, I was working through a flare up. It's so interesting. I said to my current boss actually recently, when I had endometriosis, I can count on the thumbs of one hand the number of days sick I took as a result of endometriosis. But honestly, give me a bad head cold and I am out for days. Like it completely floors me. So again, I was working through one of these awful flare ups and I was again clammy and grey and sweating and I had a hot water bottle with me because that's an endo girl's best friend. Hot water bottle with me. I'd gone to the loo, if I'm entirely honest, I'd gone to the loo just to decompress and just to kind of get away from being on the shop floor and just to kind of sit and bend over for a little while. And I wasn't sitting at my desk, I was sitting somewhere else because I was doing a big proofreading job. And I came back to the table I was using to do it. And I turned around, there was a little kitchenette behind me, and he was in the kitchen filling up my hot water
Oh,
bottle.
that's so
And I went to my desk nearby to pick something up, and I turned around, he'd put my hot water bottle on the table, gone into his office and closed the door,
sad.
and we never spoke of it
Oh, that's so
because
lovely.
it was just his very quiet, kind. And I tell this story all the time. I tell it to leaders all the time about the importance of kindness. It's my best example of the importance of kindness. I've never forgotten it and I never will. It was such a beautiful thing that he did, but he didn't look for any credit for it. He just kind of went, "Manage with thing." And it was just him recognizing that I reckon you should probably be in bed and you're not. And I appreciate that. And I know why you're doing it. And I appreciate that you're doing it for this reason. And I can't do much, but this is the most that I can do. And it will stay with me forever. And so I think, yeah, if you are managing somebody, if someone's listening to this and they are managing somebody with endometriosis, those things really count. Those very small kindnesses make an enormous difference.
That gave me goosebumps when you said, and do you know what? When I've spoke to workplaces before, they almost want like this huge, big tick list of what they can do, like huge changes. I'm like, it's not about the huge changes. It's about simple, small changes, just simple empathy, support, appreciation, giving somebody a room to sit in. Like you said, you went to the toilet because you needed that kind of just time to compose yourself. The hot water bottle, heat pads. Some places have like a long cardigan in case you've bled through and, you can wrap it around you for a bit of dignity. It's just the real small things. Having supplies in the toilets. So, if you pour out as a surprise, and that's not just for endometriosis, whatever menstrual health condition, also with perimenopause, going through menopause, sometimes you go months without and then suddenly you're like caught short. And yeah, so I just think it's this real simple things. And I think that's in life as well. And it's a shame doctors couldn't kind of have the same attitude that it's just the small things that they could ask you that could make a huge difference.
You're exactly right. But also, I also feel like in the workplace, it's about relationship as well. That manager was really making the effort to step into my situation in the best way that he possibly could without any experience or any kind of prior knowledge or anything like that, to just step into that situation as best he could. And kind of it was almost a solidarity moment. And it all hinges on relationship, I think, as well, because whether that is that someone say there's a long cardi over there if you need it, or whatever it is, that's because of the relationship that you've built up together. He and I worked really well together. We were really quite close, and that shone through in that moment, I think. So I would also encourage businesses to really invest in those relationships as well,
Mhm.
and to encourage leaders who are managing people with any chronic health condition to just really invest in that relationship and really invest in that conversation around, is there anything I can be doing for you? Is there anything you need from the business that could help you right now? And to acknowledge in that very small way, it was big to me, but it probably felt quite small to him,
Yeah.
in that way that he did, that I acknowledge that you're working when chances are you should probably be in bed, if that is what they're doing. And we probably all work, when you have something that happens every month, you can't be off every month with it. So we are all working through flare ups. And so just to acknowledge when that's happening, you can see it. You can definitely tell when someone's doing it.
It takes a little bit of awareness for some. I think
Yeah,
people walk
sure.
around with their eyes shut. Mm, yeah, yeah, there's obvious signs, and they're not hard to spot, like you've mentioned some of them. So, um, in terms of like what works for you, looking after yourself, what have you done that's worked well for you and enabled you to cope better with the situation you're in?
Yeah, I think I had to force myself into a level of honesty that I hadn't felt able to have before. So I think I had to force myself to be able to say to people, "I'm really sorry. I know I said I'd see you tonight, but I'm having a massive endo flare and I really just need to be in bed with a hot water bottle." And I think previously I would have said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I've got to work late," or "I'm really sorry. The dog I don't have is unwell," or something. I would have found another reason. But I think just because that relieves that pressure on you as well, as the person having to make the excuse. If you're able to be honest and not, the time I think of the time I wasted trying to come up with what I thought was a plausible excuse for not doing something that I'd committed to because I was now in this different situation, is a huge amount, and it's the effort that takes, like
Yeah.
sort of lying with the hot water and going, I mean, maybe I could say I'm still at work. It's just madness. And so I think if I could give any advice to anybody, I would say, hey, you possibly can really be honest and really say, because also people kind of go, what's that? And then you tell them, and then they start to understand. And if you're able to tell them and say, there are some parts of the medical world that think it's very similar to active labour, you've got a frame of reference for it as well then. And then people perhaps will be able to to see that actually you can't just put your coat on, book yourself up and go out for drinks. So I think that just being more honest about what was happening. I think, but to be that honest, you have to get a diagnosis. And again, it's that struggle of getting that diagnosis. I was only able to start doing that once I knew what the problem was.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was kind of going, oh, I'm stuck at work. Sorry, I'm not going to get out.
Yeah.
So, that diagnosis is so important to get that validity as well.
Yeah, I completely see where you're coming from. And I think for me, I used to lie, but it was pre-diagnosis as well. So I would say I had to work, I had a project on, or I had a headache, but it would never be about the endometriosis. And I think probably because I didn't have an official diagnosis, that I felt that I couldn't use it as an excuse, but it wasn't an excuse. It's like just saying, "I've got this searing pain. I feel like I'm being stabbed in the ovaries, and my legs literally feel like jelly because, like, I've got pain in my knees even," like, everything. Like, that would have been enough, surely, but it's almost like, I think because we doubt ourselves so much because we're not taken seriously by the medical professionals, that why will a friend take that seriously? You know, if I say I've got period pains, can't come. But then I've learned that actually I was frightened of saying it because I was fearful that people wouldn't understand or they'd stop inviting me out. The real friends, the real people that matter, they won't do that. They'll pop round and see if you're all right. They will send you a text and say, "We're missing you, and, let's get a date in when you feel better," or, "We can rearrange this. We don't need to do it if you're not fit." I think the fear is you do miss out a lot as well from having endometriosis on your life. Do you feel like you've missed a lot of social situations because of it?
Yeah, I think I do. I think, or I certainly feel like I've, because I used to force myself out to things
Mm,
and then leave early. So yeah, so I feel like I not, never had that's dramatic, but I feel like I oftentimes didn't have a full experience of things because I would go out and then just go, oh, to be honest, I'm not feeling great. I'm going to go home. I've got a big day tomorrow, big day at work, big meeting. And, I'm going to take an early mark and, head off. It's hard to do on a Friday, but, I'm going to have an early mark. I'm going to head off. And so I think I maybe didn't get the full social experience that my friends had. But I'm fairly introverted, so to be honest, it's probably not as much of a problem as it would be for maybe other people.
mm,
But part of me also kind of thinks, because we're told a lot when we first get our periods, aren't we, about what it's going to be painful, it's going to be painful. And I was half expecting somebody, if I did say, to say, what these awful cramps, for them to be like, what are you, 14?
mm.
You know, because we're meant to grow out of, aren't we? Can be more resilient. We're meant to grow out of the awful searing pain. But some of us don't. But some of us don't, not because we can't withstand pain and have a low pain threshold. It's because we're experiencing a very particular kind of period. I think, yeah, I think I was always afraid that somebody would just be like, oh my gosh, what are you like for? So yeah, I think you do miss out a lot socially. But again, as you say, you don't miss out with the people who matter, because the people who really matter will always matter. And I've really, really, really discovered that, actually, that the ones who stick around really stick around, and they're worth their weight in gold.
Well, that's good. It's good that you've got those people in your life that really appreciate you. And it is hard not to then to be defined. I talk about this a lot, but been defined by the condition. We kind of define ourselves, but then you think, do other people could like define me by endometriosis? And I have, said to my friends before and they've said, well, I think of endometriosis and I think of you. And I'm like, not sure how I feel about that. And I guess do it for a job and I talk about it a lot. But
Yeah.
it's like, it's easy to have people go, well, Fiona's got endometriosis. We won't bother asking them out because we know she'll say she can't come because last time she said she was in pain. You say the people that really get it and that matter in your life will keep asking and keep making sure that, yeah, you're involved.
Also, I mean, the other thing I found as well is, since I had my hysterectomy 6 years ago, and obviously I don't experience the endo symptoms anymore, but it's really interesting because I always say I will take menopause over endo all day long and twice on Sundays. Like, it's, for me anyway, my experience of menopause, um, it hasn't been easy, but it's been nothing compared to my experience of endometriosis. And it does leave a shadow. It leaves a bit of a shadow. Even things like, I mean, fortunately, we just kind of, laugh about it a little bit now, but the nature of my endometriosis meant that going over holes or bumps in the
Yeah,
road was absolute
I hear
agony.
you.
You know, when my husband and I'd be driving, he would sometimes go, "Oh, there's a hole there, love. Give that a wide berth. Oh, love, on your left." And he'd be spotting for me, which was hilarious. But even now, still, we'll be out in the car, and I'll go over a bump, and one of us
Woof.
will 100% say, "Imagine that if we had endo." We just went on holiday, and we're in a tuk-tuk, and my husband said to me, "Imagine this with endo." I was like, because it was like bumping
Yeah.
along the road in Thailand, and it does leave this shadow with you as well. So even when you are, healed and you're in menopause or perimenopause and, your periods have fundamentally stopped and you're not experiencing that anymore, it really does leave a shadow. And I think, whatever else I go through in life, it will be the thing for me. It will absolutely be the thing that people kind of say, "Oh, I don't know, don't know how it would come up," but I would always say, "Oh yeah, endo was the worst," because it just impacts every single part of your life and every single part of how you think of yourself as well. Again, back in that resilience thing, you really beat yourself up. You really give yourself a hard time, when you have endo in a way that is probably unfair, I would imagine. But yeah, it can anyway. Sorry, I don't want to say that and scare anyone or freak anybody out. For me, anyway, it's left a shadow a little bit on me, in that it will always be the thing that I return to, I think, as being a major problem in my life, yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I think I agree with you in the sense that anybody that's had endo, it's going to be part of their story. Like you say, it may be physically removed from your body, but there's lasting impacts that it's had all over your life, mentally and physically, that may still show up. Maybe it won't, but it's still part of your story.
Yeah, for sure.
So I loved chatting to you today. As always, a couple of things I like to end with is, first of all, if you've got a top tip or if you've got one message that you would like to impart and share with anybody listening about what you've learned.
Yeah, I think if you are somebody either with endo or you think you might have endo, if you think you might have endo, then absolutely keep fighting. I totally understand how hard it is. I absolutely understand how exhausting the fight is. But when you get great care, and I was so fortunate, I had a fantastic gynae consultant. I often say that, she could have operated on me with a rusty nail in the car park and I'd have been absolutely fine. She was absolutely amazing. When you get great quality care, it is completely life changing. And I would also say, do try and be honest. Even if you don't have a diagnosis yet, to kind of say, "Just, I have terrible periods. I suffer from endometriosis," and actually start that conversation with people so that you don't feel like you're having to say you've got a migraine or a big meeting at work in the morning or whatever your kind of excuse of choice is. And I think if you have someone in your life who has very, very difficult, painful periods, whether they've got a diagnosis of anything or not, especially if you're a woman, I would just say, just please try and not measure their situation by your own. It might be that you do have a relatively easy ride with your periods, but everyone doesn't. And so that's not a slight against your friend or your family member. That is just a situation that the two of you are in, and just to try and get out of that, or try not to at least express that idea that, well, we all have periods, just don't express that. It's so damaging. I'll never forget that person saying that to me. So just to that's the thing. I think just try and take yourself out of their experience and let their experience be theirs, I think is probably what I'd say.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Thank you. I think the crux of it is like ask for help and get a second opinion if you need to. Like keep going until you get the answers you want, and care and good care isn't that easy to find, but you can find it. So keep going until you find somebody that actually is doing what you want them to do.
But maybe that is the answer. Maybe if you're not getting anywhere with your GP, maybe book a smear test, speak to a nurse. Maybe that's the answer. It was the answer for me, but it was more by kind of accident than anything else. Maybe that is the answer. If you're not getting anywhere with your GP, then go and speak to, and there's sexual health nurses in most surgeries as well. Speak to them, see if they can force the issue for you, and that will take some of that pressure off you as well.
A really good idea. And the last point you made about words are, powerful, and words that other people say can be harmful to you, but also words can be really positively powerful. And I think what you've shared today is definitely an example of that, that be kind to ourselves and speak kind to others as well. because you never know what anybody's going through.
Exactly right. So
I would love people to reach out to you if they've resonated with anything and want to get in touch. Is there any way that people can contact you?
yeah, sure. My email is Fiona Furman, FURMAN, @gmail.com. If you want to drop me a line there, I'd be more than happy to have a chat.
Thank you. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I will share your links with this as well so people can find you. But thank you so much for your time and all the knowledge you have shared today.
Thank you so much. And hang in there, everyone. You'll come out the other side of it.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Far from it.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Fully Told. If you've got any questions or you'd like to share your own story, I would love to hear from you. Get in touch at hello@pausefully.co.uk. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please help me keep making a difference by giving the podcast a follow, share, or leave a comment. If this episode has resonated with you, you will find a list of charities on my website where donations are very welcome. Find out more at pausefully.co.uk and don't forget to explore the other episodes of Fully Told for more honest conversations and inspiring stories.